Hello, everyone. Welcome to our open discussion about Node.js in the cloud. I'm very glad to be here, and today we have a great lineup of the speakers and the expert. Let me ask them to introduce yourself and say where you're from and what do you do. So let's start from Ellie.
Hey, I'm Allie. I live in Chicago right now, but I'm a little bit of a digital nomad, so I don't stay in one place for too long. I am a senior developer advocate at AWS on the Amplify team, so I work mostly with making the cloud a little bit easier for front-end and mobile developers. So that's my specialization, I guess.
Great, thank you. Aaron, please introduce yourself.
Well, good morning. I'm Aaron Hammer. I'm based in Los Gatos, California, which is in the Bay Area. I'm the founder of Sideway, which is a new streaming service where stories are presented within a simulated social network. So we kind of create fake sandbox social networks to create fictional stories. And I've actually spent the last 4 months directing a show for the first time in 22 years since I left film school.
Great. Ruben, please go ahead.
Hello, everybody. I'm Ruben. I live in Brighton, UK, near London. And I am a software developer at an American Express. And I mostly work with Microfront 10 framework, which is open source. And I'll be sharing about that later. But yeah, that's me.
Great. Alejandro.
All right. Hey, everyone. I'm Alejandro from Buenos Aires, Argentina. I worked mostly on backend technologies, Node.js. I help with a couple of communities, both local and a few international, like Node School. And yeah, excited to be here.
Great. And our serverless hero, Slobodan.
Hello. I'm Slobodan, and I'm co-founder and CTO of Vacation Tracker, a live tracking management system. I'm also AWS serverless hero. I work a lot with serverless, and I also wrote a book about serverless applications with Node.js with my friend Alexander Simovic.
Great. So let's start, guys. Node.js, as you know, have become a very popular choice in startups and even enterprises, and especially in serverless. And building the new app, what architecture would you like to have, and what is the way you would like to choose? The regular server approach with routes, or the serverless architecture with the functions? And if you are building an application with the functions in a serverless, what level of granularity you would like to prefer and suggest to our audience? Is it a monolithic application, or is it services, microservices, or functions? And should I start on the beginning of the project from a monolith and then deep dive to the functions? What do you think about this?
So, who will start? Should we start with the same?
Oh yeah, Slobodan, please, because I'm looking at your picture.
Yeah. Sorry. I can just speak about my perspective and what I'm doing for my startup and also my other company, Cloud Horizon. Basically, our startup, Vacation Tracker, is now 100% serverless. It's on AWS. And our approach is basically to start with serverless because it works really well for us. And then if you're not able to do something with serverless, if we need to hack something, then we just fall back on some other things such as containers or maybe instances if needed. But fortunately for now, we managed to build everything with serverless without big problems. And so far it works really good. We have a lot of Lambda functions now in production. We use monorepo for our application, but it's basically, we have few services, and each service has a bunch of different Lambda functions and other services inside that service. For example, leave management system, then Slack integration, then Microsoft Teams integration, and things like these. And they interact with one another through some APIs, and they're basically some kind of microservices. So for me, Lambda function is a small function, but I don't look at one Lambda function as an application. It's more like one controller inside, let's say Happy Framework or Express or something like that. So for us, that works really well, and the cost so far is really low. Right now, our infrastructure costs less than 1% of our monthly revenue. So yeah, that works really good for us. But
Nice.
Again, this is different use case, so maybe it will not be the same for everyone.
Nice. Ellie, what do you think about this?
Yeah, I would agree that different problems have different solutions. And so depending on your team, their experiences, and what you need to prioritize in your product, that's what you should use. That being said, I really appreciate the serverless approach because it does take a lot of work off of the developers and make that process a lot less scary. Like I've worked for startups most of my career and have definitely dealt with a lot of downtime and a lot of server catastrophes, and that being managed by serverless, I think is a positive. So that's the direction that I would go in, but there are different solutions to different problems.
Great. Alejandro, server or serverless with the functions?
I think there's been a lot of improvement on the CPU-bound tasks moving into the function area. But I think there's a lot of room for improvement there. Still, for CPU-bound processes, I would still think that it's easier to get by with a server, with an instance running, than a function. And for things that maybe does not need that level of performance or granularity, whether you change the instance size or the CPU or the threads number for that, I would go with functions for that.
Great. Thank you. Ruben?
Yeah, so coming back to the use case, so the first question I will have will be scalability. You know, if you want to start small and then go big, then serverless is very useful because you don't have to worry about the scaling things. You don't have to worry about how are we going to be able to manage the load from the start. So that, I guess, apart from that, and obviously the implications on the small cost, because you're only paying for what you're using, that's very attractive for startups because they don't have to worry about scalability. But now, if you think about large enterprises, and if you think, shall we adopt a serverless architecture where we already have an infrastructure in place? So I think the question there would be, okay, what are the benefits? And if we already have something established, then where does serverless fit into that architecture? And also, if we are going to use serverless for a specific task. So we were discussing earlier, like if we are going to carry on with our infrastructure, but then we want to try some of the serverless functions for CPU intensive tasks, or for things that require a lot of requests, or that we have a lot of load. I think that would be the question and the decision that we will have to make in terms of architecture, deciding where does it fit in a large enterprise, because I mean, not everyone has the opportunity to just design from scratch, like in the startup world, where you can just have everything at your disposition, that you can just choose the technology. Sometimes when you have something already established, it's harder to make that decision to adopt something different. But I guess there is serverless also attractive for large enterprises because of the load as well. So yeah.
Great. Thank you. Aaron?
Yeah, I think Ali made an excellent point when she basically said, like you have to start with what you're comfortable with. And I think, to me, developer economics are always going to be key decision making. If you I usually, when I hire people and they ask, oh, should I use, this technology or this framework to start building this new service? And I was like, well, how experienced are you with whatever you're suggesting? And they say, well, I've been doing, 5 years of work with, with this framework, but I've been hearing that this is the future, so I should, move there. And I would say like, well, start with whatever will make you the most productive. You personally as a developer, start with the technology and the architecture and the tools that you feel the most comfortable with. And then as you start building your service, you don't have to wait 5 years to do this. Like after a few months, when you kind of, what you're doing, you kind of have a proof of concept that's up and running, then you can start asking yourself the bigger architectural question. And it's very challenging. There are use cases for serverless that are obvious. You do image processing, data processing. There's all these things that Node is not great at when it comes to the event loop, because if anything is CPU bound, takes a long time, then your server is basically doing one thing, and that's kind of where serverless really shines. So if you have to resize images for previews, that's kind of a no-brainer. Like anybody starting today will go and reach for that tool, regardless of where they're working in. But then if you're just doing, okay, you log in, should your logins be a server or should it be a serverless function? And now you're kind of like, okay, there's no trivial solution for that. Some of the thing have been said before. Yes, serverless will be way cheaper for you when you start, but will probably be a lot more expensive than regular containers as you scale up, because it's unbounded. Because basically, the more requests you're getting, the more serverless instances are potentially running. Yes, you can set boundaries and stuff like that, but if you're running containers, you say, look, I can only afford to run 5 containers, this size. I want to pay this amount of money every month. And yeah, my service quality might degrade over time as I have more load, but at least, I can decide, okay, I'm going to add one more server. I know the exact cost of that server. So it's a lot easier for budgeting than other, more elastic infrastructure components.
So can I jump in just quickly here? I don't agree that it's easier to budget. It's different. It's easier to know one server costs like, let's say $30 or something like that. And with Lambda function, you have completely different pricing models. So I personally have zero idea how many servers do I need for something. You need to load test your application. You need to see how many users can you serve with one server. And with Lambda functions, it's different. It's like basically from fixed costs, you're moving to variable costs. And it really depends on what you're building. That's, I think, the key of everything. If you're building the system where you have limited budget, then of course it's better to go with something that you can predict easily. But if you're building a SaaS or something like that, or even a big enterprise where you earn some money from your users, it's okay to scale your infrastructure and everything with more users and, of course, more money that you're getting. And it's really hard to do that in the beginning, but I don't think that functions are the most important part of serverless. For us, it's really important that we don't think about scalability of some other components. For example, I know the cost of my bugs. For example, we did some bug and we had like 250 million writes inside our database for 1 month, and that cost $300. So yeah, it's something that we could prevent, but we have alarms on billing and everything else. And everything scaled. My service didn't stop working for them, and the cost itself, it's not that big. So for us, production is like $250 or something like that. So it's really cheap. It's different for enterprise applications, of course, but again, if you pay for infrastructure servers, but you also need to pay people that will maintain these servers. So yeah, the cost is not that predictable. It's not just the cost of the server itself. Someone need to do something about that server.
Yeah, and you can control the amount of the functions, right? You can.
Yeah, but it's still it depends. If you have a limited number of functions, then some of your users will get the error. With servers, it's different. You can get the higher load, but you'll still get the response. So that point is really good, of course.
Agree. And also we have a question from our audience. It's exactly about the use case. So the question is how Node.js in the cloud helps for IoT in the cloud.
Well, it depends what do you want to do with IoT. So you need to process some data, and as long as you want to process some data, of course, Node.js can help you with that. And most of the Node.js is in the cloud anyway, right? It's like if you don't own like a serverless function, you probably host that on some kind of server or something like that you don't have in your living room. So anyway, in the end, that's kind of a cloud. But yeah. I'm not really experienced with IoT, but you can use WebSockets with serverless, and you can use WebSockets with Node.js. So with traditional Node.js servers, so I don't think there's a big difference. And it's just, it depends on what do you want to do with your data.
Agree. And also we can use the IoT hub, let's say in AWS, yes, and process the data via Node.js again in a stream. Anyone would like to add something to this question?